Hello and welcome back to Grounding God. So good to have you here. Okay, moving forward, let's talk about the universal energy, the metaphysical astrology evolutionary step of the third house Gemini Mercury Triad. We are still in the first quadrant of the astrology wheel. Hence, these are still the initial lessons of the evolutionary process the astrology wheel represents. Like tarot, many people use astrology to predict mundane earthly events, basically our fate. However, the higher expression of both astrology and tarot are not tools to forewarn us of an upcoming event. This can make a person a slave to astrology and universal forces or the fate that is being predicted for them. Instead, the higher understanding and interpretation of both astrology and tarot are tools that can help us rise above the universal forces, the fate. And they are guides on how to use our free will to rise above these cyclical patterns in our lives, to free us from external forces, to help us lead us to healthy, happy, and fulfilling lives in all ways. Metaphysical astrology is exactly that. It is the higher interpretation of astrology, not telling you your fate, but how to use your free will to rise above it. Or in essence, how to be the master of your own destiny. It guides us on how to best use our free will in any fateful situation. Here, metaphysical astrology is designed to show you how to overcome what mainstream astrology predicts as what you should prepare for and gives you ways to be positive and productive regardless of what the universe is throwing at you on any given day. With that said, I want to quickly mention that in this metaphysical evolutionary step of the third house Gemini Mercury Triad, we come to the end of the first quadrant of the wheel, the southeast quadrant, the southwest quadrant, which symbolized our initial evolutionary lessons in this lifetime. Okay, the evolutionary step of the third house Gemini Mercury Triad in its lower expression, being in the first quadrant, is still an egocentric energy. That is when a person has not yet learned the give and take of learning through and receiving communication from everything in their immediate surroundings. Humans, like animals, learn to communicate through interacting with those in their environment. Very early in life, we don't just learn through verbal language, we learn through nonverbal communication as well, such as body language of others in our environment. When or where larger families are the norm, younger children learn as much about communication or healthy communication or lack of healthy communication from their siblings and close extended family members as they do from their parents. Unfortunately, now with smaller families, many learn to communicate more at preschool, amongst strangers, amongst many other toddlers or infants needing as much attention as they do to learn. As a result, many of us no longer learn to communicate from close one-on-one loving interactions with loving family members. The result is humans learn less and less how to listen effectively and more how to talk over others. You see it everywhere. If you come from a big family and you were one of the younger siblings, you might remember how much of what you learned from your elder siblings was simply from watching or listening to them, not talking at them, right? As they communicated through speech and actions. I was the youngest in my family, and by the time I came along, no adult seemed to have any extra time to teach me anything. So I would spend my time watching my older brother and sister and their neighborhood friends, interact and do things. That's how I learned to ride a bike. I watched other children until I felt ready to give it a go myself. Then I borrowed one of the older children's bikes, since I didn't have one of my own, and simply imitated their actions. After a couple goes and a couple falls and a couple scrapes and bruises, I mastered the skill without any verbal instruction, simply from what I learned from my environment, that give and take of information. What I am trying to illustrate here is the third house, Gemini, Mercury, Triad, is not just communication via some sort of language transfer. It is how adept or how well we learn from everything, every word, every action we hear and or observe in our immediate environment, and how well we learn to correctly respond to that acquired knowledge. To make a graphic example, let's say you had an alcoholic parent who hugged you 1 minute as a child, just to verbally abuse you the next, or vice versa. You wouldn't learn a very helpful way to communicate with the world, would you? No. Or if every time you spoke up in a sea of preschoolers, you were ignored or told to be quiet by the overwhelmed preschool staff, you would have a hard time learning that your opinion mattered, or that anyone even wanted to hear it at all, or that if you don't want to be reprimanded, it might be best not to say anything at all. I think you can see where I'm going. If the energy of this third house Gemini Mercury Triad is not harmonic, and when you're young, a person will tend to have a bit of a split or dual personality, right? When it comes to their communication style. Or they can be born with blockages here as well in their natal chart. This in turn leads to other people as they grow up perceiving them as two-faced, because they might not be able to read the room correctly, or they might be saying one thing, what they feel is safe to say, but then doing the exact opposite. Or they simply say nothing at all about their true intentions. They appear to be playing head games, right? This block in the receptive and expressive language learning communication style will result in all forms of havoc in their lives from their unbalanced learning and communication, or their understanding of it. The third house, the twins of Gemini, symbolize this exact dichotomy when this energy isn't mastered to overcome, or it's blocked by something in your natal chart or a transit. To overcome any blockages with this universal energy, one must learn to listen effectively to all that surrounds them, including verbal and non-verbal input. To learn to communicate more constructively, more harmonically with those around them, and hence lead more productive lives. One must learn to understand that everyone has something valuable to teach them and not to be closed off to that. They need to be settled enough, secure enough in their own expression to be open to hear others clearly. When one is blocked to the flow of this energy, one discards others' people and their ideas. They can be disinterested or bore easily in what another has to say. That is why people with an energy block here, or if they're overly influenced by this energy in some way, they bore easily. It's not Mercury retrograde causing a communication problem. When a planet is retrograde, it simply means that they are closer to the Earth and thus their energy is amplified. Any issues at this time spotlight issues that have always been there and still need to be corrected. When Geminis bore easily, this is because this is when their energy is out of sync. One is blocked from learning anything of interest from another place or situation. Their minds are not open or still enough to hear. The term monkey mind fits this blocked energy very well. In this triad, this house, one must learn how to be open to connecting with their environment on a deeper level, so they can both send and receive information to and from others in a way that is supportive, inspiring, and most importantly, constructive for all those involved. One can't be stuck in communicating in a superficial, ego-based and or destructive manner where they can only hear their own thoughts and opinions, completely ignoring or closing themselves off to another person's thoughts and opinions. Communication that is truly constructive for ourselves and all those in our environment is created through an open dialogue, an open give and take of honest information, of knowing what you honestly think, and feel, and communicating that, right? Our personal truths and our personal beliefs, and understanding that others' truths are as important to consider as well. That everyone has value. Everyone has something to teach us. Okay, enough on this third house Gemini Mercury triad for now. The next video up on this playlist will address the fourth house triad and its metaphysical astrology evolutionary step. It'll be the first house in the second quadrant of the wheel. Remember, the highest interpretation of astrology, which we use in metaphysical astrology, is not to predict your fate, but to set you free from it. Thanks for visiting Grounding Gods. Until next time, I wish you a divinely guided day. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.